My wife cheated with her boss and convinced me to sign a prenup so she could get my $250, $0 inheritance. But I found out she's secretly been funneling funds into a luxury condo in her sister's name while claiming bankruptcy. Now she's suing me for half the property I never even knew existed. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife cheated on me, and not just that, but how she managed to make me sign a prenup so she could get my inheritance while secretly funneling money into some luxury condo in her sister's name. Honestly, the whole thing feels like a bad soap opera, but it's my damn life. We'd been married for 5 years. Her name. And she's always been pretty manipulative, but I thought I knew her. I thought I knew everything about her. She's the kind of woman who's quick with a smile but can turn icy in an instant. She's beautiful, confident, and always had a way of making me feel like I was lucky to have her. But looking back, there were little signs, little cracks in that I ignored. She was more secretive about her. Phone always had her laptop open late at night, and she started traveling more for business trips that she insisted were purely professional. Everything changed the day I got the notification from my bank about a large transfer. It was a wire transfer 50-0 going into an account I didn't recognize. I pulled up the details, and that's when I saw the name, Luxury Condos LLC. My stomach dropped. I didn't even know she was involved in real estate or that she was funneling money into a condo in her sister's name. The kicker: she'd been claiming she was drowning in debt, filing for bankruptcy, and that she couldn't even afford the rent anymore. That night I sat her down, feeling like I was about to explode. I asked her outright about the transfer, about the condo, about her finances. Her reaction: she looked at me like I was crazy, laughed it off, and said, "You're overreacting. It's just some savings I've been trying to keep secret. You know how stressed I've been lately. It's nothing serious." But I knew better. I could see the flicker of guilt behind her eyes, the way her fingers fidgeted when I pressed. She tried to brush it off, claiming it was just a mistake, that she was planning to come clean soon. But I didn't buy it. Not after everything else I'd discovered. Then there was the little detail I found buried in her email trash, messages from her boss, Mark, talking about meeting up after hours and keeping things discreet. I'd always suspected she was cheating, but seeing the proof was like a punch to the gut. The worst part: she had the nerve to tell me I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that I was crazy for even doubting her, that she loved me and would never do anything to hurt me. I felt betrayed, angry, and utterly humiliated. How could she lie so blatantly? How could she manipulate me into signing a prenup, making me think she was doing it for us, when all along she was planning her escape route, one that involved my money and her affair? It was like I'd been played for a fool for years. And the worst: I still had no idea how deep this went. Was the affair just with Mark, or was there more? How long had she been lying? I knew I had to do something. I couldn't just let this go. The betrayal was too deep, the lies too thick. But at the same time, part of me was terrified. What if I lost everything? The inheritance, the house, everything I'd worked for. My mind was racing, trying to process how my life had fallen apart so fast. I decided I'd confront her again, but this time I had a plan. I'd gather all the evidence, get to the bottom of her lies, and figure out what I was really dealing with. Because I knew one thing: once I found out the full truth, there was no way I could stay silent. I wouldn't let her get away with this. Not without consequences. Not without making her pay for what she'd done. The next day I started digging deeper. I knew I couldn't just confront her blindly. I had to be smart about this. I pulled out my laptop and started going through every email, every bank statement I could find. I wanted to know exactly how much she'd taken, where it all went, and how long she'd been planning this. It was like peeling back layers of a lie that she'd built around herself. That's when I discovered the really shocking part. The condo in her sister's name wasn't just some side project she'd been quietly funding. No, it was a full-blown luxury apartment, ballroom-sized, with floor-to-ceiling windows, a private balcony overlooking the city. And she'd been funneling money into it for over a year, probably more. I found wire transfers, receipts, even a few pictures she'd sent her sister, bragging about her little secret. I couldn't believe she'd kept this from me. I thought we shared everything, but apparently there were whole chunks of her life I never knew about. And this condo, it wasn't just a place to escape. It was her backup plan, her way out if she decided to leave me. And she'd been planning it all along while pretending to be the perfect wife. The more I looked, the more I realized how deep her deception went. She convinced me to sign a prenup, claiming it was for protection in case anything happened, but she used it to secure her future, her escape route, while I was none the wiser. She'd hidden her real financial situation, lied about her debts, and made me believe she was drowning in it all. Meanwhile, she was secretly building a new life in that condo, probably planning how to walk away with half my inheritance and whatever else she could get her hands on. And then there was Mark. I found emails from him, talking about meeting after work and making plans, which confirmed my suspicions. I'd always wondered why she was so secretive about her phone, why she'd leave the room whenever she took a call. It all added up now. She was cheating on me and I was just too blind to see it. I felt sick. Not just angry, sick to my stomach. I thought I knew her, but she'd been lying to my face for years. I started questioning everything. The vows we took, the life we built. Was any of it real, or was I just living in a fantasy while she was plotting her escape? I decided I needed to confront her again, but this time I was prepared. I wanted her to see I knew everything. I wanted her to realize I wasn't some fool she could manipulate anymore. I set a date for us to talk that evening, knowing that the truth was about to come out. But I also knew I had to be careful. If she caught wind of what I'd uncovered, she might try to cover her tracks or, even worse, do something reckless. That night I sat her down in the living room, my heart pounding. I had all the evidence laid out on my laptop. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her I knew about the condo, about the money she'd been funneling, about her affair with Mark. Her reaction: she looked furious, then defensive. She started lying again, saying I was paranoid, that the condo was a gift from her sister, that the money transfers were just savings, and that I was blowing everything out of proportion. But I didn't buy her lies this time. I told her I knew she'd been cheating, that I'd seen the emails, the transfers, the proof. I told her I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious. I asked her why she'd do this to me, to us. Her only answer was to call me crazy, to accuse me of mistrust, and to say I was just jealous because she was more successful than me. That was her go-to line, turning everything around, making it seem like I was the problem. I couldn't believe her audacity. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd married, was now a stranger in my eyes. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. My mind was racing with questions. How long had she been lying? Was she planning to leave me? Was she planning to take everything and run? That night, I realized I couldn't keep going like this. I was done being played. I told her I needed some space, that I was going to talk to a lawyer. I needed to know what my rights were, what I could do to protect myself and whatever was left of my assets. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. She'd broken that trust beyond repair. I also knew that I had to prepare for the worst. But I wasn't going to let her win. If she thought she could lie her way out of this, she was dead wrong. I was going to fight for what was mine, my inheritance, my life, my dignity. And I'd make sure she paid for the betrayal she'd inflicted on me. This was only the beginning. The days that followed were a blur of legal meetings, emotional fallout, and quiet, simmering anger. I spent hours on the phone with a lawyer, trying to understand exactly where I stood and what I could do. The more I learned, the more clear it became that my wife had played me for a fool. She manipulated every piece of our life together: her lies, her secret bank accounts, the condo she'd been funneling money into, all while convincing me to sign a prenup that she later claimed was for our protection. Yeah, right. I couldn't believe she had the nerve to lie about the condo being a gift from her sister. I'd found receipts, wire transfers, and even a few pictures she'd sent her sister, bragging about her secret project. It was obvious she'd been planning her escape for months, maybe even years. The worst part: she'd kept me completely in the dark, building her new life behind my back while I was busy working, paying the bills, and trusting her. I was angry, but I also felt betrayed. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all the signs? Was I really that blind? Or was she just that good at hiding her true self? I had always believed in honesty and loyalty, and now I was faced with the reality that the woman I loved had been lying to me every chance she got. One thing was clear: she was trying to gaslight me. Every time I brought up the evidence, she'd dismiss it as misunderstandings or mistakes, insisting I was paranoid. She said I was jealous, that Mark was and that I was overreacting. But I knew better. I'd seen the messages, the bank transfers, the condo pictures. There was no denying it anymore. That's when I decided I needed to confront her again, but this time with a plan. I told her I'd been talking to my lawyer and was considering divorce. Her reaction, a mixture of anger and panic. She tried to turn it around, saying I was throwing away everything we had, that I was crazy to even think she'd cheat or steal from me. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was done being manipulated. I told her I wanted the truth, all of it. I wanted her to admit what she'd done and why. She started crying, acting all innocent. She said she'd been stressed, that she was sorry, and that she never meant for it to happen. That's the classic line: blame everything on stress and circumstances. But I saw through her. This wasn't some moment of weakness. This was calculated, planned betrayal. I pressed her further, asking about the condo, about the money, about Mark. She finally snapped a little, snapping at me that I was crazy for even doubting her, that I was jealous of her success, that she deserved better than my suspicion. I could see the anger building behind her eyes, and it made me realize how far gone she was. She wasn't remorseful. She was defensive, like a cornered animal. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing over everything I'd uncovered. I felt a strange mixture of sadness and rage. Sadness because I'd truly loved her, and rage because she'd shattered that love with lies and deception. I kept thinking about the life we'd built, our home, our plans, and how easily she'd thrown it all away for a condo and an affair. I knew I had to make some tough decisions. I couldn't stay in this limbo, wondering what was real and what was just her lies. I decided I'd visit the lawyer again, get everything documented, and prepare for a possible divorce. I also realized I needed to protect my inheritance, my $250, $0, because I suspected she'd try to claim part of it, citing her contributions or some bullshit. She might even try to sue me for half the property I never even knew existed, just like she'd threatened in her latest court papers. Honestly, the thought of losing everything made my stomach turn. But I also knew that staying with her, pretending everything was okay, was worse. I couldn't live like this, walking on eggshells, questioning every word, every look. I was starting to see her for what she really was: manipulative, selfish, and willing to do anything for her own benefit. So I decided I'd fight. I'd fight for my money, my dignity, and whatever was left of my self-respect. Because if she thought she could walk away with my inheritance and my life without consequences, she had another thing coming. I wasn't going down without a fight. I'd make her regret ever crossing the line. And I'd make damn sure she knew I wasn't some pushover anymore. This was war, and I was ready to win it. Over the next couple of weeks, I threw myself into gathering every piece of evidence I could find. I wasn't just doing it for revenge. I needed to be prepared to make sure she couldn't spin her way out of this. I hired a private investigator just to verify everything I'd uncovered. Turns out, he found even more than I expected. There were bank accounts in her sister's name, multiple transfers to secret storage units, and a bunch of online activity that linked back to her affair with Mark. It was like she'd been building her own secret empire right under my nose. I also got access to her phone, her emails, her social media accounts. There was a treasure trove of lies and deception. She'd been telling her friends she was overwhelmed, stressed out, and that she was just trying to get her life together. Meanwhile, she was planning her escape, plotting how to take half my inheritance and walk away smiling. The hardest part was seeing her face when I confronted her with the new evidence. She looked genuinely panicked, like she knew she'd been caught but refused to admit it. Instead, she played the victim, crying and saying I was accusing her of things she didn't do. I wanted to scream at her, tell her how much I hated being played for a fool, but I kept my composure. I had to be smart. One night I sat her down again, this time with a folder full of everything I'd collected. I told her I was done trusting her, that I was filing for divorce, and that I was going to fight for what's mine. Her reaction: she got angry, then downright bitchy, telling me I was crazy for even thinking she'd do something like this. She accused me of controlling her, of not trusting her, and of trying to ruin her life. That was her go-to, blame everyone but herself. But I wasn't backing down. I told her I knew about the condo, about the money, about her affair. I reminded her that I had the evidence and that I was prepared to go to court to get everything sorted out. Her face went pale, and for the first time I saw a flicker of real fear behind her eyes. She tried to deny everything, calling it all a misunderstanding, but I just shook my head and said, "No more lies, I've seen enough." It was then she started to really lose it. She yelled, calling me paranoid, jealous, and crazy, just like she did before. But I wasn't listening anymore. I knew the truth, and I was done pretending that everything was fine. I could see her for what she was: a manipulator, a liar, a person willing to destroy everything for her own gain. The next step was legal. I met with my lawyer again, armed with all the evidence, and we started filing the paperwork. I wanted to protect my inheritance, to prevent her from claiming anything she wasn't entitled to. I also wanted to get a clear picture of what I was up against, because I knew she'd fight me tooth and nail. She was good at twisting facts, at lying her way out of trouble. I had to be prepared for anything. In the meantime, she kept trying to spin her story. She told everyone that I was accusing her unfairly, that I was jealous of her success, and that she was the victim. That only made me angrier. I knew the truth, and I knew she'd do anything to keep her secret hidden. I didn't care anymore about her lies. I just wanted justice. Looking back, I realize I never really knew her at all. I thought I loved her, but what I loved was the illusion of her. Now I see clearly. She's a selfish, manipulative woman who's been using me from the start. And I can't wait to see her face when the truth finally comes out in court. Because then she'll see that I'm not the fool she thought I was. I'm done being her pawn. It's time for her to face the consequences of her betrayal. The court dates started coming up faster than I expected, and each one felt like a punch to the gut. Continued to deny everything, playing the victim at every turn. She claimed I was harassing her, that I was jealous, and that she had done nothing wrong. Her lawyer was doing everything they could to spin it, but the evidence I had was overwhelming. The wire transfers, the emails, the pictures of her with Mark, everything painted a clear picture of her deceit. Meanwhile, I was trying to keep my emotions in check. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't furious. Furious at her lies, furious at myself for trusting her, and furious that she tried to cheat her way into my inheritance. That $250, $0, was supposed to be my safety net, my future, and now I was fighting just to protect what was legally mine. One of the biggest blows came when I found out she had already filed a court claim. She was suing me for half the property, the condo, the savings, everything I never even knew she was claiming. I was stunned. How could she do this? How could she try to take what wasn't even hers? And that's when I realized she wasn't just after my money. She was after total control. She was trying to destroy me financially and emotionally, to leave me nothing. I met with my lawyer again, and we hashed out our strategy. I was going to fight her every step of the way. I had the evidence, and I was ready to take this to court. I knew it wouldn't be easy. She'd probably lie, cheat, and manipulate her way through it. But I also knew I had the truth on my side. In the meantime, I cut off all contact with, no more texts, no more calls. I couldn't stand to look at her or hear her voice anymore. Every time I saw her in court, I felt a mixture of disgust and sadness. How did I get here? How did I let someone I loved do this to me? But I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I was finally seeing her for who she really was, a selfish, manipulative woman who only cared about herself. The courtroom battles were exhausting. I had to testify, produce all the evidence, and withstand her lawyer's attempts to discredit me. Sat there, cold and aloof, her eyes fixed on the judge like she was already planning her next move. I could tell she was good at pretending, but I also saw the cracks, her frustration, her desperation. Throughout this process, I kept asking myself if I'd ever get over it. The betrayal cut deep, but I knew I had to move forward. I had to rebuild my life piece by piece without her. I started focusing on myself, working out, reconnecting with friends, and trying to find some sense of normalcy again. The day of the final hearing arrived, and I sat there, feeling drained but determined. The judge listened to both sides, examined the evidence, and finally made her ruling. It was a victory. She awarded me the inheritance, protected my assets, and dismissed claim to the condo. The court confirmed that claims were baseless, that she'd been trying to steal from me all along. When I left the courthouse that day, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. The nightmare was finally over, but the scars remained. I realized I'd been through something I never thought I'd experience: trust shattered, love betrayed, and a life turned upside down. Looking back, I learned a lot. Trust is fragile, and people can hide their true selves behind a pretty face. I also learned that sometimes you have to fight for yourself, no matter how much it hurts. And most importantly, I learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I survived this mess, and I'm moving forward one step at a time. To anyone out there dealing with betrayal or deception, trust your gut, gather your evidence, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Because in the end, you're the only one who's truly got your back. After everything was settled legally, I felt like I could finally breathe again. The court's decision was a huge relief, but the emotional toll was something I knew I'd carry with me for a long time. Still, I refused to let this define me. I had lost a lot: trust, love, security, but I was determined to rebuild my life from the ground up. The first thing I did was cut ties with for good. I changed my phone number, blocked her on social media, and made a clean break. I didn't want to see her or hear her voice ever again. I couldn't stand the thought of her manipulating or lying to me anymore. I realized that the best thing I could do for myself was to move forward without her. I also took some time to reflect on the lessons I'd learned. I'd always believed that honesty and loyalty mattered most, but now I knew that sometimes people hide their true selves behind a mask, sometimes even the ones you love. Trust has to be earned. And even then, you have to stay vigilant. I'd been blinded by love, but I'd learned to see the warning signs before it was too late. Financially, I was fortunate. The court ruling protected my inheritance, and I was able to keep what was rightfully mine. That money, my $250, $0, became a foundation for my future. I put it into a new savings account, started investing, and focused on building a stable life. I realized I'd been so consumed by the betrayal that I'd almost forgotten to focus on myself. I also reached out to some close friends and family. They supported me through the worst of it, and talking to them helped me process everything. I learned that I wasn't alone, and that there are people who genuinely care, even when it feels like the world is crashing down around you. Over time, I started dating again, cautiously at first. I didn't rush into anything. Trust had to be rebuilt, and I wasn't going to jump into another relationship without being sure. But I also knew I was stronger than before. I'd survived betrayal, deception, and heartbreak, and I was still standing. Looking back, I realized that this experience changed me. It made me more cautious, but also more aware of my worth. I learned that sometimes people will do anything for their own gain, and that you have to be prepared to fight for what's rightfully yours. I also learned that forgiveness isn't always about the other person. It's about forgiving yourself for trusting too easily, for ignoring the signs, and for staying too long in a situation that wasn't healthy. Now, I'm focused on rebuilding and moving forward. I still have scars, but they're a reminder of what I've been through and of how much stronger I am now. I don't hold on to bitterness or anger anymore. Instead, I choose to see this as a hard-earned lesson that taught me to be more careful, more resilient, and more determined. To anyone who might be going through something similar, trust your instincts, protect yourself, and never be afraid to stand up for what's yours. Sometimes the only way to truly move on is to face the truth head-on, no matter how painful it might be. Because in the end, your happiness and peace of mind are worth fighting for. And if you keep that in mind, you'll come out of it stronger, just like I did.